Just like, hey everybody, we are live. We've just been, you got me my trial highs there. I never know how quickly it's going to go to live, and then it's like, what sort of face are you going to get? So, thank you very much for joining us. We are day 3 of This Is Burnout. It is the afternoon of Wednesday. It is 1 p.m. and I'm joined by the fabulous Michelle Hartley. Hey, you.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you for thank you for booking your slot. I'm very excited to see how. Well, I'm excited to see where we go. So I think sometimes if we're specifically talking about a topic, we might dig into something a little bit deeper, right?
Yeah.
But I want to say thank you for joining. If you are watching, if there are any comments or anything that you want to share on any of your social, please do so with the hashtag This Is Burnout. Let's keep the conversation going. Feel free to tag Michelle and myself in whatever it is that you're posting or talking about. If it relates to this conversation, if it relates to your own story, please just keep using the hashtag This Is Burnout so we can continue to raise as much awareness as we possibly can. But for the next 45 minutes, Michelle, the focus is all on you. Yay, how exciting. I think we were kind of saying before we went live. So obviously I know about your background and experiences, but I think there may even be stuff that we talk about today that we haven't spoken about before. I don't know necessarily I don't know what any of your answers are going to be to what we've got. Right? Yeah, well, best way, right? We'll just wing it. So we've got 5 or 6 questions that we'll kind of work through. We may go off on a tangent. We may see what happens. So we'll kind of go from there. But before we get started, just give us a bit of a background. Who is Michelle Hartley and what do you do?
Oh, I feel like I'm in a coaching session. I'm Michelle Hartley. Tell me who you are at your core. And I'm like,
who are you? Yeah.
So yes, I'm Michelle Hartley. I do lots of different things, but primarily my strapline is I take HR from beige to brilliant through lots of different solutions. So I do training for HR people. I do coaching for professional women who want to connect back to their authentic selves, and loads of other cool stuff. I've got my little Geek Squad, which is my monthly series with my little community on WhatsApp, which basically gives me life and laughter every day. And everything else in between. So beige to brilliant, I'm your gal.
Awesome. And you do that, right? And I think you live up to that strapline brilliantly. I don't think anybody, right, if you put Michelle Hartley and beige in the same sentence, they'd be like, what? So I think you're definitely bringing the brilliance and the colour, right? I'm really missing it. So again, for those of you that haven't had me bang on about this all day, I thought I kept losing my internet connection yesterday. The screen kept going, and my office is colourful.
Yeah.
But I've kind of commandeered my mum's newly converted garage room this morning, and I got here and I was like, it's so white. I've got a huge picture. I couldn't even fit it in my, so I've got a mini, which I've managed to fit this chair in and my laptop stand. I wanted to bring a really bright picture because I knew it was light, but I didn't know just how, and I was like, at one angle that we were sat in, I was like, you can't even see my hair. Like my hair was blended into the wall. I was like, that is not a good look. But I think that everybody would be able to say that Michelle is just full of colour and energy in everything that you kind of do and put out there. And I know that me and many others in the HR community will really appreciate that. And even beyond HR, right? I think your Friday Binfluencer videos are getting...
Yeah, they go for everybody. Everybody loves a good thing, apparently. Yeah, I'm quite excited. Yeah. The Binfluencer is wide-ranging.
The Binfluencer is wide-ranging. Get yourself in the bin on a Friday. You don't have to get yourself in the bin. No, but definitely get yourself over to Michelle's stuff. Awesome. Okay, so let's start talking burnout. So, and again, I want to say to everybody that's watching, I think some of the depth in which we're taking these conversations this week, like some of the conversations have been going really, really deep, really, really quickly. And I think whilst they're making a big difference and they're definitely encouraging more people to share their story, it's not easy viewing or easy listening for everybody. So I want to kind of put that out there to start off with. Burnout is a difficult topic to talk about. Some of the places that burnout can take us to isn't easy. So I just want to kind of flag that. But yeah, kick us off, Michelle. So when did you experience burnout?
So yeah, and I like what you said actually about these conversations being hard, watching and listening. I know we talked about this just before we went live, where I was like, I don't know how you're doing it. This is so hard. So yes, absolutely, it's really hard. So yeah, my first experience of burnout was in 2019. I was an HRD at the time, and workload was absolutely carnage. I just couldn't get on top of everything. It'd been a long time coming. My brilliant and wonderful MD had died, and it was just so full on. It was so hard. So my burnout sort of, it was weird. It sort of took me by surprise. But now looking back on it and being as connected as I am now to myself, my body, my needs, I could have clocked it much earlier. But at the time, it just came out of nowhere. Like literally came out of nowhere. 1 week, I was just crying before work. And I used to take my makeup bag on the passenger seat of my car so that I could touch up my makeup on the way to work, because I'd just be crying it all off on my way to work. And I'd have done it twice or 3 times before I even left the house. So the day that I kind of just went, woo, gonna wave the flag, was I was doing my makeup again on my little dressing table, and was just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I literally had my eyeliner in my hand and was like, why do I keep doing this? So I messaged my boss and just said, you know what, I can't do it today. I'm feeling really frazzled. And I actually used the word burned out. I said, I'm feeling really burned out with everything. And he came back and was like, yeah, fine. Don't worry, take the time that you need. And that was the start of it, really, that I just kind of went, no more. I can't keep doing this to myself. So yeah, it was a really strange thing. And I think one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot is this high functioning bit, right? Where, you know, I was smashing it every day. Anyone who knew me would say, you're phenomenal. Like, I got described as a formidable woman. Like, I was literally smashing it out every day. Give me something, I'll smash it. You know, high performer, top of the tree, doing all my stuff, getting it all done to a very high standard. But it just broke me in the end. Like that high functioning bit. That's why I think it took me by so much of a surprise, because I was like, hang on a minute, I'm this woman over here that's like super formidable and high functioning. Like what I can't be broken. What?
And I think that's the bit that takes us all by surprise, isn't it? So like you said, you used the word burnout there, and again, I think from all of the clients that I've worked with to go from burnout to where they currently are, the conversations that I have, the conversations that I'm having this week, it is like there were signs there. We'll come on and talk about some of the signs, but it's then like there was one pinnacle moment. You're talking about, like, I'm sat there with my eyeliner in my hand, which is something that you will have done every day. And actually, by the sounds of it, as you were getting more and more emotional and crying in the car, more than once a day you were doing that thing. So there's that thing that happens. We have all these signs and we see all of that happening. But it really is that need to, like, I've got to keep pushing, I've got to keep working. And the commonality, I think, with every single person, every single conversation that I have is that high functioning. Now, for lots of us, and I think, again, with hindsight and the more that we know about it, it's not high functioning, right? It's absolute chaos and panic and fear of dropping balls, getting caught out. It's, you know, it's all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, to the outside and to everybody else, oh my God, Michelle, like, you're so amazing, you're so high performing, like, Kelly, well done, you just smashed that thing.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the thing. And I think, again, when people, I don't mean make light of it in the wrong sense. I'm sure people say it with all good meaning, but it's like, well, burnout's a bit like being a swan. Actually, it's bugger all like that. If that's the closest analogy that you've got to it, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But actually, it feels like, well, certainly for me, we'll come on to kind of your stuff, but actually, you're just like constant firefighting. Yeah, it's like I have to keep up, like, I can't stop. If I stop, the whole house is going to burn down. It's all of that stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I used to describe it to my team as whack-a-mole. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm just whacking all the moles down constantly.
Yeah.
Like, and that's how it felt. But like whack-a-mole, when you get to like level 25 and you're like, oh my God, there's so many, I can't.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally just constant, like, plate spinning, whacking the mole, like, just, it was carnage. Yeah, so I absolutely get that.
So talk to us about some of the signs that you were experiencing up to, I think probably maybe if we do it kind of up until the day that you realised something needs to change, and then we'll maybe talk about from that day on what started to kind of spiral, what changed, and those sorts of things for you. So up until that point of kind of eyeliner day, what had the signs of burnout been for you up until that point?
Yeah, and this is really interesting for me. So I have lived with depression for a really long time. So I think that there's an element of like masking that or writing off some of the symptoms I was experiencing down to depression, because depression was like my comfort zone. That sounds awful, doesn't it? But I know depression. I know how to handle depression. I know what my coping strategies are. So of course I'm just writing that off to, oh, it's just my depression kicking in, or it's just a challenge. So super low mood, really high levels of just exhaustion, worn out, tired, sleeping but not waking up refreshed, waking up, I mean I still do this by the way, but waking up at like 4 a.m. just full like heart attack moment, oh my god, I've forgotten to reply to blah, you know, something worky would wake me up, instant wake up. And in the end I used to have a notepad by my bed and I'd just write down whatever was in my head so that I could go back to sleep. So that was one of the biggies for me. I did have lots of like stress dreams that I didn't clock with stress dreams until much later. So I was having lots of dreams about things like my teeth falling out, lots of dreams about my teeth falling out, which is a stress thing apparently. You know, lots of high pressure dreams, driving a car and the brakes don't work, driving a car, it goes out of control all the time, every night. And then I also had, and I always think this one's funny, I mean it isn't funny, but decision fatigue. So I'd be at work and I'd be like, decision, get stuff done. And I'd come home and Ray would be like, what do you want for tea? And I'm like, shut up, just leave me alone, stop asking any questions. You know, I just have nothing left in terms of like decision making. And it was really interesting when you said this week that you'd laid out all your clothes for the week and all of your food prep and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh my God, I used to do that just to survive work. Like I'd have all my outfits hung up in the spare room ready to go, with jewelry, with underwear, with everything, because I knew that I couldn't make decisions, that I had nothing left. By the time I finished work, I'd have nothing left. And then I had like Sunday scaries, which actually started on Saturday. So it was just constant, you know, that like anxiety, hot chest feeling, all of those things. Like if they happened to me now, I'd absolutely be getting it. Like, right, kick in some decent self-care, give yourself a break, take a rest, get outside. But at the time, those were things that I just kept writing off, you know, and then suddenly I was not interested in exercise, personal life, going out, talking to people. Like, just couldn't do it. Massive overwhelm, I think, was probably the collection of symptoms I was experiencing in lots of different ways.
And yet actually you are a very social person, so to withdraw from those situations and not want to be around people, that must have been in effect kind of depleting your energy even more, right? Because you get your energy from those social situations, you get your kind of buzz from those social situations and those social interactions. So take to the point where you're already running on empty. And actually in the last conversation, I don't know if I've kind of said this to you before either, but Julie was like amazed at what I said. And I was like, I think I've been talking about this for a long time. But I think almost like when we get to the point of burnout, it is like we're then stealing tomorrow's energy to bring it into today.
Yes.
And when we're doing that, so if you're stealing tomorrow's energy to get you through today, at the same time as stopping doing the social interactions that give you the energy and make you feel joyful, almost you're then kind of not necessarily just borrowing tomorrow's energy, but you're also kind of borrowing from Friday as well, because you haven't got those reserves from the stuff that you would normally do. Would that resonate with you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, because I use it in my insights work a lot, actually, as I talk about being solar powered. You get your energy from the outside, from other people. And so I was a solar powered human living in a cave, effectively. I can't do anymore, so I can't get the energy, I can't do the things that give me the buzz, and so I'm just hiding, cutting back and not getting any benefit from it.
Whereas I think I went a little bit the other way on the social side. As you know, everybody disagrees with this, but I promise you it's true. I am probably like one of the world's biggest introverts ever. And yet actually when I was getting close to burnout, almost to prove to everybody that I was fine, I became more social. So if anybody was asking me to do, although I had stopped my yoga, I'd stopped my meditation, you know, I was drinking more. I was doing a lot of stuff to kind of get
the drinking.
But I started, like, I don't drink caffeine, right? I am a peppermint tea person. I was drinking coffee and alcohol to kind of get me through a work day. And because I was then drinking more alcohol, I was more social. Like I was going out after work with my team or with friends or something pretty much every day of the week. Now, that is not my norm because I recharge as an introvert on my own.
Yeah.
But it was like I couldn't face being on my own because it was almost like then I would have to face the reality that something needs to change. So I went the other way. Whereas you as a social person, you were like, no, I don't
retreat. Yeah.
So you were stopping doing it that way. And I was stopping my recharge time of being on my own by being like the biggest social butterfly on the, like, hey, let's do drinks. Like that is not me. That's really not me. I think I said to you yesterday, didn't I? Like, I've got this dinner tonight. And I'm like, oh, I've got to be around people. Like that was the first thing I was thinking about this morning. I actually have to be with people and get through a dinner. Like I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh no.
Whereas you might kind of relish that. So so I think that kind of, I suppose, almost kind of changing our habits or withdrawing from the things that we know give us the energy. Is something to be conscious of.
Yeah, definitely. That withdrawing from whatever brings you joy and energy is key. I mean, I used to love exercising, running, going to the gym. All of those things stopped. I just couldn't do it. Just didn't have it in the tank. And I think now, interestingly, thinking about extroversion, introversion side of things, I'm actually much more introverted. But I think that's because I'm much more connected to my energy than I was before. So it's quite interesting to see how it changes your kind of makeup and motivation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we get to eyeliner day. You have said, I can't do it today. I'm feeling burned out. And you then said that kind of was the start of what was to come. So from that point, what did things then start to look like or feel like for you?
Yeah, it was interesting, I think, because from then on, it kind of became more, I would say, more anxiety based. So it was almost like when I flicked the switch and accepted, that I couldn't do it anymore, it was like all of the anxiety stuff came out. And I've never experienced a level of anxiety like it in my life. And I hope I never do again, to be honest. But it was like it started from then. But again, if I think about it, there were times when those typical anxiety symptoms were coming out, but I was ignoring them or writing them off to something else. So,
and could you explain what those symptoms, anxiety symptoms, were like for you?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest one, and I think we've spoken about this before, but the biggest one for me was I could not stop my heart racing. I just couldn't. And there was one leadership team meeting where my boss, who was sat up, big board table, boss was sat opposite me, and he said, "Whoa, you just stop sighing." And I was like, I didn't realise I was. And what I was trying to do was like control my heart rate by just kind of going and just trying to get that vasovagal kind of connection back and trying to like have a full breath. So I couldn't get a full breath and I couldn't get my heart rate down. So that was happening before burnout day, before eyeliner day. And so that made a big difference for me once I'd kind of just accepted that I wasn't right, things weren't happening right. So that was probably the biggest thing for me, was the heart rate racing, but like racing 100 miles an hour, like so fast. And just the thoughts that would not leave my head, like ruminating constant thoughts about work, constantly about work. And I ended up I had to throw it away because it was really upsetting once I got better. But I had a notepad and I thought, right, I'm just going to write everything down, because if I write it down, if anybody asks me, I've got it, and I can also send it to people if they need it. I wrote it down, and it was this little, like the little A5 spiral bound pads. I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and it's like the ramblings of a mad person. I mean, I suppose I was a mad person at the time, but just ramblings about like people, the leadership team, what they did, how I felt about it, what work I needed to do, what projects I had for whom, when they were due, just completely illogical ramblings. But I had to write it all down, and then I just couldn't look at it again, and I got rid of it because I couldn't keep looking at it. But yeah, those kinds of, I guess, anxious I don't know, I would call it like almost like self-bullying behavior. I'm just constantly battering myself. Shouldn't feel like this. You need to stop your heart rate. You need to do this. You need to do that. Why aren't you doing this? Why do I feel like this? Why is it like this? Just constant, really difficult, almost out of control of myself somehow. For somebody who's been very, structured, contained, performance-led person just suddenly being out of control of what felt like their mind and body all at once was just hideous. And I couldn't concentrate. And again, I think we've touched on this, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. Couldn't read, could barely look at my phone, couldn't listen to music, couldn't, all of the things I would have for my lovely coping strategies, couldn't do. Couldn't watch anything on Netflix. Too long, couldn't do it. Like, just couldn't engage my brain for longer than a few seconds at a time. It was awful.
And again, I think that's definitely been a common theme through the conversations that I've had this week. But yet, when we look at the other stuff, and we can say whether it's functioning or not functioning, but the fact that we are in effect still performing, right? You were still getting out of bed, you were still getting ready, you were still getting in the car, you were still going to work, you were still doing all of that stuff. And again, it's like I want to say the stuff that matters, but maybe it's the stuff that doesn't matter, right? Fundamentally, at that point that we get to that point, what should matter is taking time out, getting ourselves to the doctors or going to see a therapist or any of that sort of stuff. And yet it's like we don't have the headspace for any of that.
Yeah.
But we put all of our headspace into, I have to keep performing at work. I have to keep going at work. I have to be doing this at work. And logic, you use the word logical there. I think logic, again, has been a very common word used this week, because actually the logical response to what is going on would be, this is crazy, stop now, go get help. And yet the part of us that keeps us going is keep performing at work, and this is all going to be okay, because as long as you don't get caught out as a failure or not coping, not working, not delivering, right? If it's almost like that would be the worst case scenario, isn't it? It's like if I stopped and somebody found me out as a failure, that would be worst case scenario. Whereas the logical part is worst case scenario is you're going to end up seriously ill in hospital or worse.
Yeah.
Like, that's worst case scenario. But when we're going through it, worst case scenario is don't let anybody catch you out as a failure.
Yeah. And my worst case scenario, genuinely, like, I felt like, oh my God, I can't cry at work. Like, I can't do that. Like, that was my worst thing. Like, my whole life was set up around not showing any emotion at work and not crying at work. Like, that was huge for me.
And I wonder what, so Julie Turney and I spoke about this a couple of hours ago, and I don't know if you had this within HR. I know a lot of the conversations today are with HR professionals. That wasn't planned. It's just the way it's kind of come out. But where we kind of got to, I was definitely told at the start of my HR career, like, you do not show emotion. Like, emotion and feelings are not things that you show as an HR professional.
Yeah.
Julie had been told the same. And yet the stuff that we are dealing with, be it bereavements, suicides, pregnancy losses, disciplinaries, grievances, all of this stuff, and and everything in between.
Yeah.
It's like I may have to, I remember one conversation, like having a conversation with somebody who was terminally ill, but it just being something else that I had to do that day, in amongst the grievances, the disciplinary notes, prepping for a board meeting and prepping for something else. And it was almost like I had to feel, I was clearly soaking it up, but it's almost like as part of our training or conditioning, it's like you're not allowed to feel any of that. It's just part of your job.
Yeah.
Do you think you had the same?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And actually, I think I was so contained because of that. That's where that formidable woman comment came from, because we were on a leadership team away day and I lost it on an activity, like, because it was a really high pressure activity, deliberately meant to be so.
Yeah.
But it was so high pressure that I just lost it and burst into tears. And it was something stupid, like identify these butterflies on this page. And it was a team exercise. So what you had to do is you all had to go off, identify these butterflies together and come back and we'd come with this list of butterflies.
Yeah.
But I thought it was mine. I thought it was my job. I had to do it. I was failing the team. I was letting them down. And that was really interesting when that activity happened, because my technical director at the time said, "You're such a formidable woman, and I can't believe that you've just lost it over butterflies." And I was like, it's not butterflies, but that's my butterfly moment, is I cannot let the team down. I can't fail, and I can't ask for help. So that was it. That was my thing. I couldn't show emotion. I couldn't show what I needed to do. I had to be very contained, because that's what you do in HR, right? No surprises, no challenges, no nothing. Yeah, everything's fine. Yeah, cool, just give it to me, I'll get it done. Yeah, leave it with me. That was it. That was my permanent phrase. Leave it with me, I'll get it sorted. And I always did.
Yeah, and again, it's been common amongst all of them, but I think more so, and again, you'll know the amount of conversations that I have with HR people about this on a daily basis. It just, like, it scares the crap out of me, actually, that is what we are continuing to do. And then again, when I see, results of Forbes, 98% of HR professionals at burnout, and I think, do you know what? 97% of those probably don't realise that that's where they're at, or how close they are to actually being there, until somebody put maybe these symptoms in front of them and said, are you experiencing any of these? And they all just went, well, yeah, but it's normal, right? It's normal. I've been dealing with this stuff for years. Of course it's not an issue. And it genuinely scares the crap out of me. And again, I think you'll know that I got, quite emotional yesterday with some of the messages that I was receiving, that people want to be able to share but cannot do so publicly at the moment, because they're either transitioning out of roles, or they're planning a transition out, or they're seriously ill as a result of burnout. And we have to keep talking about the symptoms. And I think in that instance, with what you've said, that, well, but you're so you're so formidable, like, basically, what are you crying over butterflies for? How many of us are putting on that brave face, but also then what's the impact? And this is kind of, and I'll come to you to answer this, but what is the impact when basically somebody says to you, but you're formidable, Michelle, like, what are you crying over butterflies for? That, because that's not exactly like supportive, oh my God, something's wrong, let me do something, like, what do you need, let me help you. That's not that sort of comment, is it? That's like, holy shit, Michelle's crying and we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
What happens to you then in that moment?
In the butterflies moment, it was hilarious, because the facilitator was a therapist, so he was brilliant. So he was brilliant, and he was like, right, you need to come and like work with me. Let's come and have a chat. So we went off and had a little chat, and he was lovely. But now, knowing me and knowing myself and my feelings and all that, I was properly triggered. Like, I was like proper. So he did the right thing in terms of like taking me out and giving me a little chat. But the team themselves were just like, no.
So thank goodness that the facilitator was a therapist, right? Imagine if they hadn't been.
Oh my word, yeah, 100%. So the team just didn't even know what to do. You could almost see that like frozen, like, oh, cool. Like, it just didn't even know what to do, how to engage, which was really.
And I suppose, again, in that situation, some of that might have been shit. Like, where's Michelle, right? Michelle usually deals with this stuff.
Yes.
Like, what do we do now?
What do we do?
Yeah. And again, I think that is another reason why we need to be ensuring that our leaders, we are developing our leaders and the managers with the right skills. Because when it is the Michelles that are getting to that point, and the default would normally be, we need Michelle to step in now and deal with this.
Yeah.
Something else has to change.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of big clanging red bell that sits in offices somewhere that's like, woo woo, this is it.
Yeah.
Actually, we need to call it now.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have enough around like awareness of the signs of burnout in leadership teams and leadership responsibilities, because no one at any point said to me, Michelle, you're like smashing out a lot and you're doing a lot of hours. Are you okay? Like, no one. And my previous MD, the one who passed away and then kind of triggered off some of that burnout space, I think. But he was brilliant, because he would always do that. Like, he'd always ask twice, and normally I'd end up in tears, but he'd always ask twice. And having that outlet was super helpful, because I knew then that I had somewhere where I could go and just like, do you know what? This is awful.
Yeah.
I need to stop. So I had that, and then of course I didn't have it, as well as grieving that loss, dealing with all the work side of that loss, where I couldn't be a human. So talking about being contained, I had to deliver all those messages in a very straight up, detached way to the rest of the business, breaking all of those hearts globally, UK, and telling all of these people all this horrible news while containing it for myself and not being allowed to be sad for my friend. That was just horrible.
Yeah. And a similar feeling, but a very, very different circumstance to that, I think, was, again, as we saw with HR during 2020, where it was HR having to deliver a lot of those messages, having to work, having to wait until Rishi's done his 5 o'clock announcement on a Friday, talking about what furlough was going to look like, and then working all weekend to ensure that the messages on Monday could be clear, and all of those sorts of things. And again, I don't think HR were given necessarily the time or space to acknowledge, like, we're in this pandemic too. And this is what we need. And, you know, you're talking about bereavement, very different. But again, you were not allowed, from what you were saying, you were not allowed to grieve in the same way as everybody else, because you had to be
hold it
HRD Michelle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, nobody was asking at that point, and this, again, we've had this conversation many times, otherwise I wouldn't jump to the conclusion, but nobody was saying, what do you need? Like, what do you need from us? Or what do you need from anybody? You know, like, do you need a therapist? Do you need a coach? Do you need a counsellor? Do you need, you know, what do you, like, it was just, you need some time off. Do you need a break? Do you need to sort out yourself? It was just, were you HR?
Yeah, exactly that. And the same with the, you know, the COVID stuff. I was still an HRD in that same business in COVID, and I'd come back from Burnout in the November 2019. And then obviously COVID hit in like March time 2020. So I had a period of 4 months where I was coming back to myself, getting reconnected, feeling better, or not, as the case may be. And then boom, pandemic. So my kind of second period of burnout was post kind of COVID, because I saw the organisation through that horrible period, massive levels of uncertainty all around, and then kind of came out of that, finished that role, and was like, ooh, that was a lot, you know. And I did the same thing second time as I did the first time, in that I just stared at the wall for probably 6 weeks. Like, my brain had stopped working, and it literally felt like, and I know this is what happens, but it did literally feel like synapses had just been cut and connections weren't being made, and my brain just stopped working. And that is genuinely how it felt. And I just sat there. That's literally how it was. I just sat there. I mean, I still had therapy. I've been having that for a really long time. So thank goodness, you know, that could continue. But even in COVID, but that wasn't the same. You know, so all of those nice little coping strategies I had of going to my therapist's office, sitting with her for that hour, having that outlet, having that space, feeling comfortable, we weren't doing that. And I think we had 2 phone sessions in the whole time during the pandemic, because it wasn't a thing. She wasn't doing it. She was concerned, I was concerned, you know, so it was just awful. Horrible.
And then what happened for you? So you got to that point. So second time, and again, I mean, we're probably talking 90% of people that I've spoken to this week. Like, we go through this a second time. It's almost like the first amount of burnout didn't finish us off properly. So we want to go through it for another one. Yeah, we'll just go through it for another one, just to make sure that what we went through first time round was burnout. And again, part of what I want to get across in this week, like, you don't have to go through it twice. You don't have to go through it once. You don't have to go through it once. You can make the changes to stop you getting to that point. But I think it's seemingly much more common than I had realised. And I think particularly because I'm pretty much doing these conversations back to back, it's like I did a second one for good measure. And then I really thought something has to properly change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you made a lot of changes from that point, right? So just kind of talk us through what then happened.
Yeah, so I mean, huge, colossal changes for me in terms of everything, really. So at that point, I think, so by the time I'd finished in that role, I decided I was going to take like the summer off and just have a break. It wasn't a break, I was wrecked. So that wasn't really a break. And then my stepfather passed away. So then I was looking after my mum, quite rightly, but in a very kind of intense emotional time. And then after that, decided that I was going to go self-employed. And so that's where, like, the whole world changed again, is where I just decided I need to do something different for myself. I can't keep working in these environments and absorbing all of that toxicity. I'm going to do something for myself. But even that, I was resisting it. And now when I look back, I think it's hilarious, because I love self-employed life. But looking back, at the time, I didn't want to do it. I was resisting it. I just did it because I thought, well, I need to make some money. I'm just going to have to do that. But, you know, mid-burnout, I was like, I'm going to be one of those people that can't work. Like, that's what's going to happen to me. And I was in panic about that. And I just thought, I don't know what I can do now. Like, because there's nothing else that I want to do in life. So it's not like I've got this big epiphany moment where I want to go off and be a, I don't know, primary school teacher, hiker in Nepal, whatever. I've never had that feeling. HR has always been my thing. So I genuinely was like, I'm going to be one of those people that can't work, and I don't know how I feel about that. Like, it's not me, but that's where I was at the time, is I just felt so broken. I thought I'd never be able to work again. So huge amounts of changes. So the first kind of few months of being self-employed, so that would be then January 2021, was when a load of my like health conditions kicked in. And again, I think we've touched on this, and it's interesting because I clocked onto Julie's session just towards the end, and she mentioned something about a thyroid condition, and that's what I got. So it's an autoimmune condition as a result of prolonged periods of stress that I've now got for life and will never go anywhere. But an autoimmune condition relating to my thyroid, which affects everything that we do, right? I didn't realise how important this little thyroid was, but I didn't have a functioning one. But thyroids do lots of things. So it massively affects things like your breathing, your hormones, your hair growth, your nail growth, your skin, how you feel, depression, all of those things are all impacted by your thyroid. And then autoimmune conditions like IBS, hay fever, rosacea, all of those things weirdly just came crashing in, a bit like the burnout itself. All of a sudden, you know, I hit 40 and everything just stopped working. And it was weird because it's almost like I had 2 years of my brain not working, and then suddenly my body stopped working. And it's that whole period of prolonged chronic stress that makes your organs in your body work differently because you're just overloading them with cortisol all the time.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing to kind of really highlight here as well. You will know, if anybody is watching this for the very, very first time, it was the physical symptoms of burnout taking over my body. It's 10 years this month, which is really why we're kind of doing this campaign then. But it was the physical symptoms, and I think for all of us, it is almost like the mental capacity has been, the mental incapacity in some cases has been going on for so long. We haven't made the changes. We haven't done what we need to do to get us fully functioning again. We've not made those improvements or made those changes. And I think by the time it has impacted our body, it really has been in our entire system for a very, very long time. Yeah. And it's not just like you wake up, you know, with a bit of a zit on your chin in the morning and it's like, oh, hey, I'm burnout. It's like, you know, mine was excruciating, crippling pain. I now live with 2 physical health conditions. I live with a serious mental health condition. Michelle's talking about these autoimmune diseases. You know, Julie's talking about thyroid issues. And if you've watched any of the videos throughout the week, we've all been left with something as a result of our burnout, be it physical, mental, or both. And I think, by the time it gets to your body, that really is like I'm not even going to say the final wake-up call, right? That is the final smack in the face that says, you know, I've been trying to get your attention for years. Yeah. You haven't been listening, and now I'm going to make sure you do.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I remember going to my GP and saying, I feel like this is the most like kind to myself I've ever been. This is the most accepting I've ever been. Like, I'm not fighting myself anymore. Why is this happening? And he was like, because it's not about the last 6 months of you being nice to yourself. This is about the last 10 years.
All of the years that you weren't.
Yeah,
exactly. And you're like, oh. And again, I think, and I do think that's an interesting thing to talk about. So the recovery, and we'll do the kind of in-betweeny bit. I want to talk about kind of what you've been doing for yourself between kind of then and now. But it is that, I don't even know how to kind of word it now, so maybe I'll just shut up. But it is that in-betweeny where we just think, oh, you know, I have, and this is why I'm, you know, you'll see me if any organisation, Michelle knows I get very, very angst about this one, but if any organisation is like, well, we're just giving our staff a week off, you know, we're going to close the business for a week for burnout. 1 week off is not going to fix burnout. And if we think it will, it's not burnout, right? If you're posting on any platform, like, well, I was really burned out and then I took a week off with my family and now I'm fully functioning again. That wasn't burnout. It may have been tiredness, exhaustion, fatigue, just needing a holiday. And we're all allowed to do all of those things without it being called burnout. Yeah. But the recovery isn't 2 weeks in a spa. You know, if it was that, I'd have been fixed 10 years ago, right? And genuinely would have been fixed. And I'm sure Michelle would as well, right? Michelle, or not to get, we've never done it together, but Michelle and I can rock a spa day, right? If spa days were going to fix this, or we would be flying by now, right? We'd both be like size 10.
Yeah, like top of the world.
Yeah, we'd be back to like pre-burnout physique and energy and all that stuff. It's not the case.
No.
Not the case.
No.
So talk to us then, between I'm going self-employed and to where you are now, what have you done for yourself? What kind of help and support have you continued to kind of get? What's that period been like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely been challenging because, like I said, I felt like I'd been, super kind to myself. I'd realised that there's a need for self-compassion. I'd been doing lots of great things, but actually that wasn't enough. So I feel like there were lots of things that I had started, but I then kind of continued to do them in a bit more, I guess, in more earnest. So therapy went up massively on the therapy side of things, which was massively helpful.
Yeah.
Things like paying attention to my energy levels rather than barreling through and ignoring them, which is what I've traditionally done my whole life, by the way, not just in the last X years. So listening to my body and my feelings was massive, and I would still consider myself to be a novice at that as well, by the way, so that's an interesting point. But one of the things I'm massively passionate about is micro acts of self-care, which sounds like one of these stupid terms that you see on the interwebs, but it's true. I was massively overwhelmed, so the thought of reading a book was too much. The thought of going to a spa day was too much. Or even having a bath some days was too much. Like a bath with candles and smelly bubbles and a nice towel, too much. So small, tiny acts of self-care was my thing. So it would be things like going out into the garden, just spending time pruning my roses for a bit. So I'd be outside and I'd be doing stuff with my roses, which I loved, and I'd be outside with nice smells and nature and all that good stuff. Drinking glasses of water, but doing it in a really mindful way. And again, sounds really fluffy, but when your brain is broken, it's a lot. So, and I still do it now. I've got a big 2-litre bottle of water in the fridge, always super icy cold. And that's my thing, is I just drink really cold water. I pay attention to it going all the way down. And it's just that mindful moment, because the more you do of these micro mindful moments, the more they add up. So things like taking time to sit in the comfy chair we've got, look out the window at the birds, taking time to fuss the cats. I still do that all the time. Like, I haven't got 5 minutes. I'm like, yes, I have got 5 minutes. I'm going to fuss a cat. Like that, those small things really, really help. So for me, it's like adding up all of these little micro acts of self-care. And I did do a whole photo series on LinkedIn probably about 1.5 years ago now. But when I was doing it, even having a mindful cup of coffee, hot drink, hold it, sit in the garden, enjoy the cold air with the warm hat, all of that, like, mindful moments. So all of those things are massive, and actually all of them will feature in my day on the regular. So today I had half an hour before this, so I thought I'm just gonna just lay down, with some music and just listen. And you know what, I was so relaxed. It was almost like an out of body experience. It was the weirdest thing. But things like that is making time, right? Small acts of self-care. And I have this stress bucket analogy. So your stress bucket is full, it's overflowing, it's carnage, everything you add in is then tipping it over again. So the micro acts of self-care are like poking a nail through the bottom of the bucket. It won't empty the bucket instantly, but actually the more nails and holes you have, eventually it will go down. And that's my thing about micro acts of self-care. So yeah, that's something I'm super passionate about.
Awesome. So therapy, micro acts of self-care. Awesome. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. And what do you think people need to know about burnout that isn't isn't the thing that we're usually talking about?
I feel like it's the high functioning thing for me. So I feel like if you've got somebody on your team who always seems to have it nailed down, who seems to be doing it all super well, 100% of the time, smashing it out, anything you give them, they can do in a heartbeat. I think that's a really good sign to sit them down and just have a chat about how they're doing and what they're doing and what's going on for them. Because for me, that's a really big sign. And I've spotted it in my coachees, I've spotted it in friends and family. And it's the high functioning bit for me is a flag. And what I think happens is people will take from that high functioning person and keep taking and keep giving them work and keep taking. And actually, probably what you need to do is just go, oh, hang on a minute. should we just have a quick conversation? How are you doing? There's a lot going on for you right now. Talk to me about that. You know, I think that would have made a big difference for me. And I think it's a good way to spot out potential for burnout in people, is that high functioning, smashing out a lot of stuff thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Michelle, anything else you want to share about burnout or anything that you have done to help yourself?
I feel like sharing and talking is a biggie. And I didn't, when I was hiding away in my little cave for that 6 weeks, which was not long enough, by the way, when I was hiding away in my cave for that 6-week time, I didn't really talk about it, and I didn't reach out to anybody, and I didn't feel like I could, because I just felt like a massive failure. And so what's important, I think, is for people like us to keep talking. So people that have been through it and feel comfortable to share, to keep talking. But also, if you know somebody who's experiencing burnout or close to burnout, just talk. I don't think you do enough of that talking. How are you? But really, how are you? And what's going on with you now? And if you can't ask that, or they give you the flippant "I'm fine," then ask it a different way. Like, how are your energy levels? How have you been doing with the gym? How are you feeling about work? All of those questions can draw out the right stuff. So sharing if you've been through it, because it's important, because actually you don't realize how many people have been through it until you start talking about it. And then finding ways to ask people in different ways, I think, is really important. So yeah, those are my key nuggets, I think.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you very, very much. Right, let's close it there. Michelle, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they get in contact with you?
At Michelle Hartley FCIPD on LinkedIn, or peoplesorted.co.uk. Come and hang out and drop me a message. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. Like I said, I know we've had this conversation many times in lots of different environments, but thank you for joining me this week to share and talk all about that. I'm very, very grateful. Thank you to everybody that's been, again, listening, watching, commenting, sharing, all of that lovely stuff. If you've got any comments, anything you want to share, please do share this on as many platforms as you've got. Hashtag this is burnout. Feel free to also tag Michelle Hartley and myself, Kelly Swindler. For now, I will say thank you very much. I am back at, I'm losing all of my time. And what is it? We are 10 to 2. I'm back at 3 o'clock with my final HR pro of the day, Denise Bray, at 3 o'clock today. And then I'm not back with you until tomorrow. So Michelle, thank you very much. Thank you everybody for watching, sharing, commenting, and all of that lovely stuff. I will see you all again soon. Take care for now. Bye.